There have been rumors for some time now that Drogon would reach the size of a 747 in Season 7. Well, we got a lot of good information to work with in Episode 4, and we've determined that his wingspan is 80% as big as a 747. But when we compare him to Balerion, you'll see that Balerion is still much bigger than Drogon. Let's skip right to the final scene of Episode 4. In this first shot, Drogon's head does not seem as tall as Dany, but when he turns his head over, we get a better angle, and it looks like his skull is almost as tall as Dany. A few frames later, he turns his head forward towards the camera to address the oncoming lion, and his head once again seems a little shorter than Dany. But it's safe to say that his skull is around the same height as Dany, in contrast to Balerion, whose skull towers over Cersei. So right away, we know that Balerion is much bigger. We'll get back to him, but first, let's figure out if Drogon is the size of a 747. This shot here is a good angle to measure the length of Drogon's body, 4 Emilia Clarkes long. And in this shot, we can see that his head and neck are about 5 Dany's long. Here's another angle to confirm that. And a few frames later, we can see Dany's cape extended, so this helps me get comfortable that I've scaled her correctly. You'll notice here that Drogon's skull actually seems about the same height as Dany, or maybe a little taller than her, even after we exclude the flesh hanging from his neck. So what do we know? Drogon's skull is around the same height as Dany. His head and neck are about 5 Dany's long, and his torso is about 4 Dany's long. In the prior dragon size video from earlier this summer, we determined that his wingspan is around 7 times the length of his head and neck or his body. So that gives us a wingspan range of 48 yards or 44 meters to 60 yards or 55 meters. Dan Weiss said that Drogon's final Season 7 size would be around a DC 9, and Matt Shackman said that Drogon will be the size of a 747. I've got Drogon somewhere in the middle, so I feel pretty good about this estimate. Drogon's wingspan is as wide as an American football field, nearly as wide as a soccer field. Here's the insanely beautiful Dany playing goalkeeper. Now let's fly her up on top of her boy Drogon where she belongs. And clearly our boy's not skipping leg day. Check out those hammies, Drogon is a beast. But Balerion was way bigger. Here's Drogon at the end of Season 6. And here he is in Season 7, Episode 4. But look how big Balerion's skull is compared to Cersei. It's not even close. Balerion dwarfs Cersei. So let's bring in Drogon. In order to sync them up, we need to increase Drogon's dimensions by 78%. Drogon looks a little bigger here after we scaled him up, but that's because I'm accounting for him having some flesh and scales around his skull, and there's a little bit of his neck in this shot too. But let's shrink Drogon back down to his real size. So Balerion's dimensions are 78% bigger than Drogon's, but visually, it looks like much more than that, right? It looks like he's many times bigger than Drogon, and that's because he is. Here's a quick math lesson. If you take a single dimension and double it, you multiply by 200% to the first power. A line becomes twice as long. But if you take a two-dimensional object and double it, the area increases by 200% to the second power, or 400%. And if you take a three-dimensional object and double its dimensions, the volume increases 200% to the third power, or 800%. Yay math! So we estimated that Balerion's dimensions are 178 times the size of Drogon's. But in terms of volume, Balerion is 178% to the third power, or over 5.5 times as big as Drogon. So Drogon's a big boy, but Balerion takes big to an entirely new level. Then again, Balerion was 220 years old, whereas Drogon is only about 6 years old. So if he doesn't die, and he continues to keep growing, Drogon will reach and surpass the size of Balerion. I'll save that analysis for a separate video, where we will also look at Viserion and Rhaegal. But clearly, magic is returned and it's very strong, which is probably why Drogon has gotten so big so fast. Let's revisit that age-old rumor. Could Balerion Blackdread really swallow mammoths whole? At first, it seems unlikely. Balerion could definitely swallow a human, and he seems big enough to swallow giants, which is pretty impressive. But he might even be able to swallow mammoths, because you don't need to get your mouth around a mammoth from head to toe. If he ate a mammoth, its legs would fold up, so a better estimate is just looking at the mammoth's body. Maybe not, but either way, the rumor that he could swallow aurochs and mammoths whole is not that far-fetched. He was gigantic. Now let's compare Balerion's full body to Drogon's. Here are Drogon and Balerion at the upper end of my calculations. And let's layer in a soccer field. Drogon's wingspan is about 80% the width of a soccer field, and Balerion's wingspan is 1.5 times as wide as a soccer field. Take a minute to appreciate this. Picture standing at one goal, which is where I took this picture from, and those dragons are on the other goal line above the goal. Look how big they are compared to it. They're huge. Now let's end this video by checking out an aerial shot. Here's Drogon. Here's a 747, and here's the legendary Balerion. And for the record, I'm still pissed that Cersei and Qyburn shot his skull in the eye with that scorpion bolt. That was pretty messed up. I want a dragon. Does anybody know how to train a dragon?